Let's dive in. A boy plays the heroic mage while a girl acts like a monster. Mid-game, he actually smacks her on the head. Naturally, she gets mad and asks why he hit her for real. His answer, monsters are supposed to lose to mages. He says it like it is the most obvious rule in the universe. The village elder Haram Burke watches this little scene unfold, chuckling that the kids are super energetic today. Jumping at the chance, the boy asks the old man how to become a real mage. But Haram Burke bursts his bubble, wanting it just is not enough. He explains that mages are the absolute peak of humanity. High-ranking nobles and elite knights who inherited crazy mysterious powers from their bloodlines. He bluntly tells them ordinary kids just cannot become mages. Period. A nearby adult thinks it is pretty weird to crush the kid's dreams so harshly. But the chat completely derails when someone casually drops that a monster popped up nearby. Haram Burke nods, confirming that a guy named Hopi actually saw the terrifying beast last night. He describes a massive house-sized leopard completely wrapped in pitch-black shadows. Still, he tries to keep everyone from panicking. He promises that their village chief already rushed to the city to hire a real mage. He swears this professional mage will definitely be able to wipe the floor with the monster. Until then, everybody needs to stay far away from the forest. Without a mage, killing that thing is basically impossible. Another guy asks if the entire village knows about this deadly threat. Haram Burke says yes. Now pay attention here. The man asks if Turan, the isolated hill shepherd, knows. Meanwhile, Turan is chilling on a sheep, totally bored with his repetitive everyday life. He figures at this rate he will literally forget how to speak. He talks to absolutely nobody up here. Right on cue, Haram Burke suddenly appears. The elder immediately starts nagging, calling Turan super lazy for napping before the sun even goes down. Annoyed, Turan tells him to move out of his sunlight. Haram Burke then asks if he is still holding a grudge over the past. He brings up his mother's death and how the village tried to steal his sheep as shared property. Turan bluntly says yes. He is definitely not generous enough to share his own inheritance. He adds they are not exactly best buddies. So just say what you want and leave. Haram Burke finally explains the real danger. A giant shadow leopard was spotted by Hopi and everyone needs to hide. Turan agrees it sounds like a massive problem, but he looks completely bored. The elder mutters that living alone makes Turan the #1 target. He honestly has no idea why the kid is not terrified. Still, he repeats that the chief went to grab a mage. He claims he only hiked up here out of pure concern. Turan calls his bluff instantly. The old man only cares about the sheep getting eaten, not him. Tells the guy to get lost. Haram Burke stomps off angry, leaving Turan to daydream about monsters being the exact opposites of mages. Just like humanity had fancy mages, the animal world had deadly monsters. He hopes he might finally see a real mage in action. Even if a small town chief probably hired a total amateur who is not very impressive. You and I know he should run right. Instead, smelling blood, he walks straight into the deadly forest. Along the way, a gruesome sight. Haram Burke is completely destroyed, ripped clean in half and soaking in blood. Despite telling everyone else to be careful, the annoying elder got caught first. Looking at the insane damage, Turan easily concludes this is absolutely the work of a monster. Suddenly, heavy footsteps approach. Boom. The beast appears exactly as described, a massive leopard dripping with dark shadows. Back in town, the kid playing mage asks his dad about monster strength. He wants to know why grown adults cannot just beat them up. His dad shivers, saying if a normal guy fought one, there would not even be bones left behind. But he pats his son's head, promising the chief will bring a heroic mage to save the day. The kid begs for absolute proof the mage will win and punish the bad monster. His dad totally guarantees it. He hypes up mages as godlike beings who can blast monsters into dust with just a single word. Deep in the forest, the monster lunges. Turan just looks at it and casually says die. Amazingly, the beast flinches like it might actually obey. He frowns when that does not instantly kill it. Commanding it to stop gets resisted too. He realizes this shadow leopard is genuinely a tough beast. As deadly claws slash through the air, Turan smoothly dodges and does what a shepherd does best. He magically hardens a rock and fires his sling. Trust me, you will want to see what happens next. Stick with me here. With perfect timing, he launches a crazy strike, ripping off half the monster's face. But this ugly thing still charges at him. So he adjusts his aim, calls his shot for the head, and makes the stone boomerang back, totally crushing the beast and ending the fight forever. Catching his breath after the battle, Turan quietly admits something crazy. This was literally his very first time using his magic against a monster. Staring at the mess, he starts stressing over the giant corpse, betting those lazy villagers will force him to clean up this entire disaster. Yep, the guy is actually a secret mage. A crazy power he unlocked way back in his childhood. He first noticed his skills at 8 years old, and by 10, he was already controlling them like an absolute boss. Showing off to his mom, he proudly proved he could control fire, bend, wind, and move random objects. But that memory hits different, mainly because it was the very first time his mom got absolutely furious. Sitting him down for a serious talk, she asked if he wanted to stay together safely. If he did, he had to swear an ironclad promise right then and there to never reveal his insane powers to anyone else. She explained that people with his gifts were called mages, strictly split into two classes, nobles and knights. Nobles claimed descent from a godlike race called the Frasians. Knights, on the other hand, were just mixed bloods born from humans. Still, she desperately warned him to hide his magic. He actually inherited this wild talent directly from his absent father. His dad was a knight, and the outside world was full of trash nobles who literally treated those knights like disposable slaves. Because of that brutal reality, nobody could ever find out his secret. She made him swear on his life to hide his magic forever. Fast forward 8 years. Turan is fully grown and still keeping his mom's promise. He has zero plans to flex his magic or ever leave his quiet little hill in the middle of nowhere. Pay attention now. Next morning, angry people aggressively banged on his door. These loud villagers instantly accused him of murdering Haram Burke. They called him absolute trash for staying quiet, wildly claiming he beat up the poor old guy and threw him as monster bait to save his own skin. Turan just stared back completely chill. He calmly replied that their crazy theory made sense, since the village elder unfortunately died totally alone out there. He added that blaming the weird, isolated young guy was just the easiest shortcut to make them all feel less guilty about it. He boldly asked who exactly sent the old man up the dangerous hill anyway. Triggered, one villager lunged forward with a nasty punch, but Turan casually sidestepped it like it was nothing. Honestly, he loved how handy secret magic was in a brawl, immediately answering back with a brutal lightning-fast headbutt. For this overpowered guy, he literally just had to imagine something happening. As long as he spent mana, the universe obeyed. So, with a super quiet whisper, he simply wished for a guy to trip and drop his weapon, casually dodging another massive club swing right after. Turan kept it completely low-key. No giant fireballs, no epic explosions, zero flashy anime moves. Just a tiny spark was enough to do the job. Super subtle, totally unsuspicious, and definitely non-lethal for these ignorant fools. And so he clowned the whole mob using their own weapons. Dodging, disarming, and hilariously making them smash their own heads in. You and I both love this. 8 whole years living like this, using sneaky magic tricks to completely hide his true identity. With everyone groaning in the dirt, Turan casually told them to save that energy for the funeral. He even turned to the women hiding in the back, asking if they wanted a beatdown too. Panicking, they swore they only came up to check on him. Rolling his eyes, he told them to drag these unconscious idiots off his property. Stepping back inside, he sighed. Trashing half the town was definitely going to cause massive headaches, just like always. They would absolutely use this drama to scam him during the next supply run. But honestly, he was totally used to their garbage. He just had to aggressively push back until they gave him a fair price. Plus, after that humiliating beatdown, they wouldn't bother him again anytime soon. But suddenly, another loud knock echoed on the front door. Annoyed, he ripped the door open, expecting round 2 with the villagers. Instead, a totally different dude was standing there calmly introducing himself as a simple traveler. Turan quickly apologized for being so aggressive, awkwardly explaining that he just finished taking out the trash with some really annoying local visitors. His mom's strict lessons on good manners suddenly kicked in. Even though, let's be real, he usually completely forgot to actually use them. This was crazy, he had never met an actual outsider before. He immediately spotted a sharp sword on the guy's hip, super rare around here. Shrugging it off, he invited the traveler inside, asking if he needed a place to crash. Later, sliding a simple plate of food across the wooden table, Turan apologized for the super basic meal. The traveler smiled, calling it a feast. He was totally shocked hearing that Turan had spent his entire life trapped in this tiny village. Turan nodded, confirming he was a born and raised shepherd who never left the hill. The swordsman, however, praised his weirdly polite etiquette, guessing his parents must have raised him right. Slightly sad, Turan explained his mother taught him those fancy manners before tragically passing away from an awful illness a few years back. The mysterious swordsman respectfully bowed his head, genuinely thanking him for the warm food and safe shelter. Turan asked why he came to this random town. The answer: a special request. Trust me, you are going to want to see what happens next. Stick with me here. They needed a monster hunter, and this stranger casually drops that he's a mage. Hearing that, Turan straight up asked if he was the elder's hired mage. The guy nodded though, looking pretty utterly confused. He explained that he could clearly sense a monster roaming the area, but somehow could not track it down. What really threw him off was Turan's total chill. Any normal, isolated kid would be absolutely terrified knowing a beast was nearby. Instead, the kid just looked mildly annoyed. So the traveler finally just flat out asked who he really was. Right then, a memory hit Turan. His mother explaining exactly why his magic had to stay a total secret forever. He warned him about ruthless nobles, basically calling them greedy shepherds. Knights were just their guard dogs, kept around as pets or tossed aside when useless. She refused to let him live like that, making him swear to hide his powers forever, especially from other magic users. If exposed, they would be torn apart, and he would become a total slave. Turan always kept that harsh truth in mind. To protect that secret, he was even prepared to kill. Suddenly, the Wanderer snapped him back, asking why he was spacing out. The guy joked that the silence was ruining his comedic timing. Turan deadpanned back that he simply lacked humor. The man awkwardly apologized for misreading the room. Turan just casually noted that he had never heard a mage crack jokes before. Finding that blunt reaction absolutely hilarious, the stranger finally introduced himself properly. He dropped his name Korn, a wandering mage. In return, Turan called himself the Shepherd of the Hill. Over dinner, Turan said he was turning 18. But get this, Korn was 75 mages age super slowly, which you and I both know is a classic fantasy flex. Asked about his wandering, Korn explained he actually spent 60 whole years serving the Badal Arabian family before finally calling it quits. He just wanted to spend his remaining years freely roaming around, no strings attached. They ended up having a super chill, normal conversation. A total shock to Turan. Seriously never imagined that just talking to another person could actually feel this incredibly pleasant. By sunset, it was time to go. Korn said his goodbyes and casually slapped a silver coin onto the table for the awesome food and lodging. Turan said thanks and wished him a successful hunt. But Korn just laughed, saying not to act like it was a final goodbye since he planned to stick around the region anyway. The very next morning, Turan was in an unusually great mood while herding sheep. It was literally his first time meeting another mage, and shockingly, he actually enjoyed having a real comfortable chat with the guy. He was honestly stunned by his own openness. It was easily the best interaction he had ever experienced with any adult in his entire life. As time passed, Korn visited Turan a few more times. Slowly, that made the kid seriously start questioning his own stubborn beliefs. He always believed knights were just emotionless mutts serving completely arrogant noble lords. But maybe Korn was the rare exception. Still, he had absolutely zero clue how to tell the guy the hill was monster-free. Meanwhile, Korn was out there relentless, tracking down battle scars and fresh creature footprints. He kept up the hunt even though the monster's aura had completely vanished into thin air. One day, Korn stumbled upon massive battle damage, but zero life signs. It heavily implied the beast was already dead and gone. Maybe the chief had hired another mage. Honestly, Korn did not care. As long as the village was safe, that was totally fine by him. Now watch closely because something totally bizarre was approaching. A giant leopard was back, but its face was mangled, radiating this nasty, twisted energy. Korn instantly recognized it as a monster specter. The beast lunged. Korn barely dodged. See, when a dead monster's raw mana is not properly absorbed or completely wiped out, it transforms into a deadly specter. Literally basic knowledge for any monster hunting mage, meaning the one who originally killed it was definitely a mage, but somehow botched the cleanup. That was absolutely baffling to Korn. Even a rookie knight knew better than that. He started wondering if the hunter actually left it like this on purpose. Super suspicious. Regardless, Korn jumped into action, charging up a massive electric arrow to finish the job. But the exact second he fired, his mana completely shattered, totally nullified. And worse, the creature just vanished into thin air. A split second later, it literally erupted from his own shadows, catching him completely off guard. He blocked the strike, but still took heavy damage. Yeah, this was definitely no ordinary basic monster. A basic knight would be dead meat. Taking this thing down would require power matching a low-ranking noble lord at minimum, which made zero sense. Whoever crushed it the first time was strong enough, but somehow just left the mana to rot into a specter. So what do you and I make of this? Finding a boss-tier threat in this random nowhere village is just absolute madness. Let's jump in because you and I know this world is completely wild. Standing right in front of him is a mutated leopard, basically a horrifying blob of cursed flesh and raw energy. Knowing the crazy risk, Karen makes a choice. If he goes down today, he is dragging this ugly monster with him. He focuses all his electric mana into one hand, just waiting for that perfect split second to strike. When this beast lunges, he goes for it, trying to parry its deadly claws with his own blast of raw lightning. Wait, before his attack even lands, boom, the monster's head just explodes. Twice, completely blowing its brains right out. Out of nowhere, Turan steps up casually asking if he is okay. Catching his breath, Karen jokes that a sheepdog is way more useful than a mage. Realizing who this kid is, Karen demands answers. Has Turan been a secret mage this whole time? Why stay so quiet? But then he switches gears. He really wants to know why Turan bothered saving him instead of just running for the hills. This triggers a flashback for Turan, back to when Karen returned carrying a dead wolf. Turan had asked why a skilled mage worked so hard for a tiny village. With his talent, he could easily live like royalty. Back then, Karen gave a humble answer. These frontier folks live in constant terror with absolutely zero protection. He said mages hold godlike power, so they should take real pride in defending the weak. Though yeah, he admitted everyone has their own style. So Turan simply replies that he helped out because everyone picks their own path. Suddenly, the headless specter twitches. It lunges right at them again, forcing both guys to dive completely out of the way. Now, watch closely, things are about to get wild. Chiron realizes they are outmatched, stating this freakish monster normally requires a noble to kill. He yells that someone needs to warn the village chief, immediately offering to hold this nightmare back. Turan says it is totally unnecessary. He believes his previous hit already secured their winning advantage. Chiron starts thinking Turan is some genius knight hiding out in the mountains, but then it hits him, this kid is something way bigger. This isn't just bumping into a gifted rookie. And it definitely isn't the dumb luck of an edgy teenager. This right here is the rare start of a mage with enough raw potential to change the entire world. Meanwhile, Turan casually admits he just really wants to test out his own limits. Chiron refuses to let the kid fight solo, demanding that they team up to crush this creepy enemy together. When the beast charges again, Turan intercepts it at blinding speed. Chiron freezes instantly, realizing he would just be dead weight since he barely tracked that last hit. It clicks instantly. His real role here is just to help Turan's insane natural talent develop. Turan goes crazy, blasting intense mana beams mixed with flying boulders straight from the dirt, doing some serious visible damage. But somehow it is still not enough to completely finish this tough specter. Okay, I know what you are thinking. Why isn't it dead? Chiron explains. Specters ignore physical hits, they only die to fire or lightning. Turan tries summoning flames but completely fails. Chiron steps in, explaining the real issue isn't just spawning magic. It is fully understanding how to apply it against living targets. You absolutely have to establish that mental link between the magical cause and effect. He suddenly realizes that Turan completely lacks this super basic magical knowledge. This explains why Turan killed the monster earlier without clearing its mana. That rookie mistake is exactly why it turned into a cursed specter. Still, it is completely mind-blowing that someone with zero basic knowledge packs such insane power. Aaron coaches him. Don't just make fire, shape it and shoot it. He explains that spawning flames is super easy, but aiming and controlling them, that is the real test. Classic overpowered logic. Turan instantly forms a giant sphere wrapped in fire rings, shooting it like a rocket and scoring a direct, devastating hit. The huge impact ignites the specter. It thrashes around, screaming wildly as it burns alive. Chiron yells at him to stay locked in. Just keep pumping mana into those flames until the monster is entirely destroyed. And moments later, boom. The beast turns into charred dust and fades away. Chiron is completely speechless, totally amazed they actually managed to kill such a ridiculously powerful specter, but the job is not over. He warns Turan that to stop round 3, they absolutely must absorb its leftover mana. Turan has never done this before, so he has zero clue how to start. Chiron calmly explains he just needs to mentally visualize pulling the mana right into his body. And Turan does exactly that, flawlessly absorbing the raw energy on his very first try. Chiron's jaw drops. He explains that normally a mage's mana pool grows at a snail's pace, expanding slowly by absorbing energy from dead monsters or rivals. But for a complete beginner, Turan is already flexing a mana pool way above the normal limit, proving he is a ridiculously overpowered once-in-a-lifetime prodigy. And that is where we leave it. Chiron deeply apologizes, finally asking which noble house this overpowered kid comes from. Alright, let's jump right in. Turan simply tells the guy to patch up his heavy bleeding first. Later, while bandaging Kiorn's arm, the knight apologizes again for acting so insanely rude to someone remarkable. Turan waves it off. He insists he is nobody special, just a fatherless shepherd, and begs the knight to drop the whole respectful act. Still, Kiorn cannot wrap his head around why a kid with such crazy power lives as a shepherd. Turan sighs, explaining it was his mother's strict wish. She was terrified of the nobles living below the mountain, knowing they would absolutely exploit him if they saw his true abilities. Kiorn nods, admitting his mom was incredibly smart. Massive power always acts like a magnet for conflict. He then brings up a massive war from 20 years ago fought between his Arabian family and the terrifying House Zahar. Thousands were wiped out. His own house lost around 900 knights in that bloodbath, nearly a third of their total military strength. Among the dead were his absolute closest friends like his buddy Denver, guy who just wanted to open a laundry shop, and his strict teacher Hartman. Even worse, he lost his own wife and son to the slaughter. By the end, Kiorn was the only one left breathing in his entire squad. Because of all that trauma, he totally gets why Turan's mom hit him. A knight's life can be thrown away for absolutely zero reason. But here's the thing, she got completely wrong. Turan's talent is definitely not on a normal level. You're talking way past just being a skilled knight. Something way bigger. Now, pay attention here. Kiorn declares the kid's potential is easily noble tier, maybe even sitting at the absolute peak of talent. Hearing this, Turan looks super confused. His mom always claimed his dad was just a regular knight, making him wonder if her whole story was fake. Kiorn points out that genetics are weird. Sometimes a kid from a high and mighty noble family is born completely useless with a sword, or flip it around, someone born to regular knights might suddenly awaken ridiculous god-tier noble talent. Because of this insane potential, Kiorn strongly suggests Turan pack his bags and see the world. Humanity is still struggling to survive out there and desperately needs strong knights and nobles. He goes on to explain some ancient history. Way back, the gods kicked out the ancient races. Now those angry ancient beings are just hiding, waiting for the perfect chance to strike back. But instead of leveling up or chasing magical enlightenment, the foolish nobles and knights are too busy fighting each other, wasting precious blood over petty squabbles. That is exactly why this messy era desperately needs someone like Turan. He finally looks at the boy and asks, "Are you seriously happy just watching fluffy sheep forever?" Turan scratches his head, asking what he would even get out of leaving. Kiorn smiles and says it all depends on his goals. "You and I both know the options are endless. Wealth, fame, power, or just finding true friends. Staying isolated on that mountain guarantees absolutely nothing." He paints a picture of Turan wandering the lands, hunting down giant beasts to protect innocent people, exploring uncharted territories, or getting scooped up by a rich noble family to reach max-level power. Walking Kiorn out, Turan admits that honestly sounds way cooler than dealing with sheep all day. For the absolute first time, a spark of real curiosity hits him. Suddenly, Kiorn starts feeling a little bit guilty, thinking he hyped the kid up way too much, but he still promises to totally root for his success. Then he realizes a major detail he missed and asks about the boy's specific lineage ability. Turan literally has no clue what that even means. Kiorn laughs, apologizing, and explains that lineage abilities are special traits passed down from their ancestors, the Freya. It is what separates the elites from knights. He asks if there is any magic spell that feels supernatural to him, or maybe some freakish hidden talent he uses. Turan guesses it is just his raw physical strength, but Kiorn shuts that down. Every single mana user has super strength, so that is pretty basic. Then the kid mentions his insanely sharp sense of smell and his crazy good rock-throwing skills. Kiorn nods, agreeing that counts as a trait. Throwing weapons is actually super common among the Arabian forces, so it is nothing too shocking. But as Turan spills more details, Kiorn starts sweating slightly. He realizes Turan's weird skill set perfectly matches the legendary hunter family house Zahar. Yeah, the exact same family that slaughtered Kiorn's squad in the war. Turan instantly feels super awkward, realizing he might be tied to his new friend's mortal enemies. The kid actually debates apologizing, even though he literally did nothing wrong. Seeing his panic, Kiorn tells him to relax. The boy was not even in the war, and old grudges are strictly grown-up problems, not his to carry. He wisely points out that answering blood with more blood just means the fighting literally never stops. And that's where we leave it. Even after this, Turan asks if he regrets, suggesting he leave. "Alright, stick with me here." Kior totally admits the risk. If Turan wants real power, he'll probably join House Seagar. But honestly, he completely trusts the kid. Turan actually saved his life even after discovering that massive secret of his. In Kior's eyes, putting a good guy like Turan high up in House Seagar might actually stop another bloody war from happening. Anyway, he decides there is no use overthinking things right now. Even so, Turan makes it clear that his mind is already firmly made up. He plans to head down the mountain, but not until Kior's injuries are fully healed. Kior finds that incredibly sweet, realizing this kid is genuinely pure-hearted. Soon after, the old veteran starts dropping some serious magic lore in detail. Mana is basically the fuel source. People call it the key to godhood, even though it isn't quite absolute limitless power like you'd think. To actually cast magic, you have to perfectly shape your mana to match the exact effect. Turan asks how that even works. Kior explains that magic difficulty always boils down to 3 massive core factors you gotta remember: lineage, affinity, and the trickiest one, causality. Lineage is purely genetic. Take those broken southern bloodlines, for example. They can literally heal wounds with 0 training just off that inherited power alone. Affinity is all about familiarity. Mages always perform way better with the specific elements they are already completely used to casting. Turan suddenly remembers his own fire magic. He literally just chucked it like a physical throwing weapon. Kior nods. That is exactly why it worked. He adapted the spell into a combat concept he already understood perfectly. Finally, we get to causality. And honestly, even Kior admits he doesn't completely grasp this confusing concept. Now pay attention to this part. Kior asks what happens if Turan tries killing someone directly using mana. The kid pictures a laser beam shooting from his head. Kior laughs, explaining that failure happens because there's absolutely no proper logical cause for that deadly effect. When an outcome is way too absurd to happen, you literally have to invent a solid logical cause for it. Turan gets it now. To kill someone, you can't just forcefully wish them dead using your raw mana. You have to build a method, like spawning fire and launching it. That makes way more natural sense than causing instant death directly. Spot on. Kior jokes that with a brain like that, the kid might actually make a better scholar than a frontline mage. Turan then points out he controls normal animals effortlessly. So why exactly do magical beasts require a completely different, much harder approach? Simple answer from Kior: those creatures actually have their own internal mana defending them. After taking all those explanations in, Turan realizes magic isn't simple. Exactly. Kior says a top-tier mage doesn't just blast energy, they perfectly understand the hardcore physics and circumstances behind every single spell. So what's the legendary Zahar family magic? Kior grins, revealing it's all about elite stealth and tracking abilities, practically daring the kid to try it. Turan focuses hard. He wishes to be completely unseen by anyone, making sure no sound or scent can be detected either. A heavy, thick mist instantly swallows his body. He whispers, asking if it actually worked. Kior confirms he can't see him at all. Honestly, you and I know that's downright terrifying. Poof. Turan casually reappears floating in midair. Kior shudders, saying it's been a really long time since he last saw that frighteningly broken ability. Back during the massive war, this exact stealth power gave the elite knights of Battle Erebon their absolute worst nightmares. Turan feels like a total cheat code, but Kior quickly warns him it isn't completely invincible. As magical training continues, Turan gets confused. Why teach all these insane methods to someone who might realistically belong to an enemy family someday? The grizzled veteran just smiles. Turan saved his life and nursed him back to health. He trusts the boy's character 100%. Fast forward, Turan drops a bomb on the village he's selling the sheep and leaving. Locals absolutely panic. They ask who's going to watch the flock, completely baffled by how he can just decide that on his own. Turan brutally shuts them down, find a new shepherd. What he does with his own property is absolutely none of their concern, and he makes it crystal clear he fully expects a fair price for those sheep. Otherwise, he'll just release the entire flock and let them try capturing them themselves. The village chief sweats, realizing this dangerous kid absolutely follows through on his words. Not worth provoking him, so he smartly pays up and lets him leave. Bags packed, Turan heads out with Kior, asking if he still owes any compensation fees. Kior waves it off. He defeated the monster anyway, so no payment needed. The two then finally acknowledge they'll be following separate paths now. Kior actually apologizes for refusing to travel together, explaining he just feels way more comfortable alone. Turan completely understands, thanking him for absolutely everything. Kior tells him to take care, and Turan replies he truly hopes they'll meet again someday. He watches Kior walk away. Trust me, you'll want what's next. Stick with me here. Turan finally realized why he hated that old knight acting so totally formal. Sure, his mom loved him, but deep down, the kid desperately wanted a real father figure. He just needed a solid role model to show him how to become a great man. With that heavy thought, our boy kept moving. He traveled straight through massive canyons and an absolutely brutal desert. Eventually, he ran into a group of guys. He completely assumed they were just harmless merchants traveling between towns. He casually asked for the nearest town. One dude pointed backwards, saying he just had to walk the exact opposite way to hit a city called Muir. Turan said thanks and turned to leave, but suddenly another guy blocked his path completely. The guy smirked, asking if he was seriously leaving without paying a little toll for that precious free information. Surprise, surprise, fake merchants. They were full-blown bandits. The boss practically laughed, saying they were in the middle of nowhere, so leaving unhurt was just not happening today. He barked at Turan to hand over all his stuff while they were still asking nicely. Now pay close attention. Turan realized what was happening, and you and I are about to see his combat magic practice shine. The bandits burst out laughing. A random kid acting like a real mage. Absolutely hilarious. Big mistake. Turan simply channeled his mana into the wind, blasting them all backward and sending their weapons flying everywhere. It clicked in his head, making wind from scratch was totally useless. Shaping the wind that was already blowing was way more efficient. Next move, he cracked open his water flask, flash froze it, and blasted sharp ice needles right into a bandit. Cool trick, sure, but he quickly realized ice magic sucked unless water was right there. Honestly, just chucking heavy rocks was a way faster combat tactic. Panic set in. An older bandit literally begged for mercy, crying that they had no idea he was a mage and offering him anything he wanted. Classic dirty trick though. It was just a distraction while the others sneaked around back. With one flick of his wrist, Turan summoned massive sand spikes, instantly wiping them out. The final guy immediately surrendered. Turan casually asked why they attacked so blindly. Did they not think he could be a deadly mage? Trembling, the guy admitted the truth. Turan was way too polite and bowed his head, making him look like a perfectly weak target. Turan locked that important lesson in his brain forever. Desperate, the bandit begged for his life. But Turan had already readied a lethal tiny drop of water right above the guy. Hiron's old advice echoed in his mind. He was going to meet all sorts of folks on this crazy journey. The golden rule: never show mercy to absolute scum who hurt innocent people just for a quick buck. You and I know he made the right call. Sparing trash means innocent people die later. Accepting that harsh reality, he finished the job and walked away. Still, his conscience felt heavy. Taking lives was tough, but he knew letting them walk free was simply not an option. He tracked the deep marks from the bandit wagon before the harsh desert wind completely erased every footprint. Slowly, the brutal desert shifted. Green grass started sprouting along the dirt path, signaling he had finally reached a completely new territory. Welcome to Muir. Technically, it was a small city, but to a kid from a tiny isolated village, this place felt absolutely massive. This was literally the very first time he had seen so many people all crowded together. Buildings were totally different too. It finally hit him. He was actually standing in one of those legendary cities from his stories. Following Chiron's advice to find an inn, he walked right up to a random merchant to ask for directions without actually buying a thing. Big mistake. The merchant snapped at him, instantly telling the kid to get lost if he wasn't spending any money. Turan quickly learned the unspoken city rule: you have to buy something before demanding free info from the locals. Using his old village coins, he bought a simple apple for 2 ducats just to grease the wheels. The merchant finally chilled out. He pointed down the road behind the cloak shop, saying to turn left and spot a building with a blue roof. Boom, he found the Lena Inn. A super friendly girl welcomed him inside, and he scored a room for a solid 16 ducats. Down to business. He asked about local monster bounties, remembering Chiron's tip about fighting beasts to absorb magical mana and rack up some easy cash. The girl dodged the question completely, making it brutally clear that out here in the real world absolutely nothing comes for free. She started rambling about the city hall, but our boy Turan had literally zero clue what that even meant. Seeing his blank stare, she laughed at his country vibes. She quickly explained that City Hall handles all the boring public management stuff. She added that the fancy officials working there directly served the local lord. She mentioned that since the sun was already down, the place was definitely completely closed. Monster bounties, he had to try tomorrow. Squinting at him, she suddenly asked if he was actually a real monster hunter. Trust me, you'll want to see what wild monster hunting secrets she reveals next. Let's dive in. Some claim anyone can become a mage, though she thought the idea was basically a joke. Right then, Madan walked up and swore it was completely true. Killing monsters really could turn a normal guy into a mage, and he had seen it himself. The attendant thought this was crazy, and asked how he was even alive. Madan just smirked, saying he definitely wasn't planning on dying before reaching mage status. Turan found this super interesting. He moved his hand aside and asked to hear the whole story. Madan broke it down. Mages get stronger by hunting monsters, so an ordinary guy could totally become a mage by doing that exact same thing. He admitted that his entire group was hunting monsters for that exact reason. Turan asked if anyone in their crew had actually pulled it off. Madan confessed, not quite yet. He added that the entire city only had the Lord's personal mage and 3 underlings anyway. Then Madan asked if Turan hunted monsters too, pointing out his super basic gear and lack of a real weapon. Turan just held up his trusty sling and said yes. Seeing how worn out it was, Madan figured it saw heavy use, guessing he could easily take down smaller targets. Seizing the moment, he pitched an offer. They needed another marksman, so was Turan interested in joining. Turan instantly shot him down. He thanked the guy but saw zero reason to actually team up. His brain was still buffering everything from today. He could barely believe he actually left his village completely unsure of what wild future was coming next. Now watch closely. He suddenly heard a tiny sound most people would completely miss. Chiron's warning flashed in his mind. Never lower your guard, not even inside a cozy inn. The city is definitely not a safe zone. He secretly gathered mana in his palm and ripped the door open. It was just Lena asking if he was sleeping. She playfully mentioned he might be cold, offering to come inside and keep him totally warm. Turan, being completely clueless, asked what she meant. Lena boldly said it meant exactly what it sounded like. He immediately turned her down flat. She just laughed, saying his ultra-serious expression made him look like a literal stone Buddha. Turan recalled another golden rule from Chiron. Always be super careful around maids and working girls. Some carry diseases or could become a deadly trap depending on the whole situation. After sending Lena packing, he realized city life was insanely tough. Here, even tiny things like basic gossip and casual chats had a literal price tag, made everything feel super calculating. Moments later, he heard hallway whispers and realized it was Madan's crew again. The guys were complaining, asking why their leader tried recruiting Turan when he looked completely useless. Madan defended him. He said the kid reminded him of his younger self, and seeing that pathetic sling actually made him genuinely worried for him. He figured sticking together might keep the kid alive longer. His crew just laughed, calling him way too soft. Eavesdropping on this, Turan finally smiled. Maybe this brutal city wasn't entirely heartless after all. You and I saw this coming. Next morning, he hit City Hall asking to hunt some monsters. Turan's words echoed again. The world crushes the weak, so he had to show real strength, maybe even reveal his true mage powers. The clerk shoved a document his way, warning him to just read it and hand it right back. His first target, a nasty mutant crow, rocking razor-sharp bladed wings. The clerk explained the rules. If he kills it, bring the corpse back to disperse its mana. Leave it, and it mutates into a deadly ghost. He bluntly warned that ditching a monster body could literally get him executed under strict city laws. Bran knew that perfectly well. He had zero intention of making a rookie mistake like that. He casually asked why the elite knights didn't handle this. The official snorted, saying knights were too busy playing police for public order, hunting nasty beasts outside the walls. That was dirty work left for guys like him. As Turan walked away, the clerk cynically muttered another corpse would show up soon. Well, joke's on him. Turan quickly marched right back, carrying that bladed crow's dead body. The whole staff dropped their jaws. He was insanely fast, and those valuable razor wings were totally unharmed. When he casually asked for his reward, a terrified official scrambled to hand over a fat coin bag. But Turan stayed put, asking for the next target. Everyone lost their minds, wondering how this crazy kid still had the stamina for more hunting. Flash forward, and he's chilling at the inn, devouring the absolute most expensive feast Lena could serve. She was absolutely stunned. Defeating 30 monsters in just 3 days, she bet he was completely loaded with cash right now. Turan just smiled. Cash was nice, but his actual goal was absorbing all that sweet monster mana. These hunts were basically power leveling. His internal mana reserves had exploded, multiplying massively since his days training with Turan, but there was a hard limit. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see how he breaks this exact barrier next. Stick with me. Lena noticed that despite being scrawny, our guy could seriously eat. The chef was thrilled. Turan stood up completely stuffed, but that peace didn't last. Suddenly, some thugs from Medan's crew boxed him in looking for a fight. They mocked him for eating alone, basically demanding he share his hard-earned cash to help them out. Turan wasn't having any of it. He answered with a brutal slap to the face, telling them if they wanted free handouts, he'd serve them exactly like this. He easily sidestepped a second attack, slamming that guy into the dirt too. First thug lunged again, but Turan effortlessly blocked it and delivered another punishing blow. Watching the chaos, Lena desperately begged them to knock it off. Sometime later, the boss Medan personally showed up to apologize. He swore he'd punished his guys and promised it was over. Maiden admitted his crew was dead broke and had just gotten super jealous after seeing our hero making bank. He forced his entire squad to bow and say sorry. Seeing this, Turan asked if things were really that desperate. Maiden sighed, saying maybe not totally hopeless, but their funds were terribly tight. In 3 days, they wouldn't even be able to pay for a bed. Shockingly, Turan casually tossed a heavy bag of coins to Maiden, calling it payment for actually treating him with a little respect. Totally confused, Medan asked how he figured that out. Turan brushed it off, stating that nothing in this world is truly free. He just wanted to buy some solid information with that cash. Lighting up, Medan confidently declared that info was his specialty. Turan could ask him absolutely anything he needed to know. By morning, Turan headed out for his final hunting trip here. Armed with Medan's details about the next major hub, he was totally ready to pack up and leave. Honestly, Turan felt he got way more than his money's worth. Medan turned out to be a genuinely decent guy. Sure, he lacked Kieran's intense experience, but that just made him refreshingly honest and kind. Now pay attention because things get wild here. Following a terrible strange scent in the woods, Turan stumbled onto a dead body. Tracking the blood, he found the whole crew slaughtered, even Medan. One guy clinging to life by a thread whispered the killer's identity. A monster rabbit, and the absolute freak of nature was still there eating. This thing was massive, way bigger than any local beast. It was the monster that killed Medan. Suddenly, the creature charged, literally ripping a giant tree out with its teeth. Turan just barely managed to dodge. Crazy fast, so he whipped out his sling, charging it with wind magic to spin at blinding speed, launching stones like high-powered missiles. But the mutant rabbit was ready. It perfectly countered every single shot before impact. A second later, the beast charged forward like an angry bull. But looking ahead, Turan was completely gone. Vanishing into thin air, he reappeared behind the monster, driving a dagger into its neck. The rabbit thrashed, but Turan repeated this exact brutal strategy, teleporting and striking until it grew totally exhausted. Ultimately, it just died from heavy blood loss. With the corpse completely still, Turan absorbed its core mana. The sheer energy was insane, packing way more raw power than even that deadly leopard he fought before. The bleeding survivor stared in total shock, asking if he was secretly a powerful mage all along. Ignoring the question, Turan gently asked if these 4 guys had any family to send their stuff to. The guy shook his head. Their only real family was their leader. This triggered a memory of Medan. He had mentioned a massive neighboring city named Orin, which housed a legendary library packed with thousands of ancient books. Catch this twist. Only actual mages could enter. You and I both know Turan is heading straight for Orin. After digging graves for the entire crew, he stood in silence, hoping Medan finally found peace in the afterlife. Eventually, he joined a massive line of travelers at the city gates. Looking around, he realized it was actually super embarrassing how impressed he was by that tiny starter town. Seeing the capital of Orin, he was completely stunned. The sheer crowd size was unbelievable. He never expected a line this massive, with armed guards strictly checking for criminals. Stepping up, the guard instantly rejected him just because he looked like absolute garbage. Disgusted, the guard called his clothes a total mess and ordered him to take a bath before coming back. Scrubbed clean, Turan finally stood in front of the legendary library. The place radiated this intensely heavy, terrifying aura, like the whole tower was forged from pure magic. Walking right up to the front, he confidently demanded access to the archives. The bouncer immediately shut him down. Mages only. Turan calmly explained that he was a mage, but the guard just laughed in his face, calling him completely crazy. Mocking him, the guard decided to test the kid by scanning his internal mana. Turan always said mages sense each other's power. Well, Turan dropped his disguise and let his true aura explode. The guard was absolutely stunned. The guard literally collapsed. Noble tier power. Trust me, you are going to want to see what happens next. He introduced himself as Mesa from the House of Rugvaltis, immediately asking about Turan's family background. Turan asked if that was a strict requirement to get inside. Mesa clarified no, but hitting the library meant getting the master's green light first, promising to tell him right away. Stick with me here. Turan was definitely disappointed, expecting a much simpler process. But cut to right now, he is getting full VIP guest treatment scrubbed down by maids in a giant bath. Super awkward. He begged them to stop so he could wash himself. But the maids panicked, saying they would be punished if they failed to properly pamper a guest. Left with zero options, he just let them finish up. Freshly scrubbed, the Rugvaltis family hooked him up with formal clothes. Even the maids were completely stunned by his glow-up. Someone else noticed too, joking that he went from total beggar to literal prince. This was Azella, the fierce young lady of the house. Turan gave his name, but dodged her question about his noble house, blaming personal reasons. Naturally, that just made her way more curious. Out of nowhere, Azella blasted her mana, and Turan instantly fired right back. Watch closely now. This crazy clash was so intense, the maids nearly passed out and had to be shielded from the blast. Once the dust settled, Azella was seriously impressed. She even joked about him marrying her right then and there. Turan just stood there speechless. She laughed it off as a joke, but told him to think about it anyway. As she walked away, he realized his hand was shaking. Her mana was exactly on par with his, maybe even a little bit deadlier. Was that kind of wild power normal for her age? Later on, he met up with the city boss, Lord Rugvaltis, who finally brought up his pending request to use the library. The Lord explained that tons of people visit Orin hunting for ancient magic or hidden secrets, but shot that rumor down completely. Turan brushed it off, saying that was not what he came for. Still, Rugvaltis made it clear he would not block his access, confirming there was absolutely zero classified intel inside the library anyway. With the sun already setting, the Lord suggested Turan come back first thing tomorrow. Turan happily agreed, promising to remember this massive favor. The next morning, hit access got officially approved, and he finally stepped into the legendary Sky Library. The name was absolutely perfect. A massive tower stretching straight into the heavens, completely bathed in sunlight pouring from above. Right at the front door, he got greeted by a librarian who honestly looked way too young for the job. Regardless, she stepped up explaining that the Lord ordered her to read him the official library rules. Ron was super confused, wondering if this kid was running the place, but she pushed through. Rule 1. Any broken books must be paid for. Rule 2 was simple. Nothing leaves the building ever. Zero exceptions for borrowing books. On top of that, she boldly declared she would be watching his every single move while he was inside. Turan admitted that sounded a bit awkward, but decided to just roll with it. He then asked if she could help track down some books, and the little librarian proudly claimed this was her absolute specialty. You and I know exactly where this is going. She asked if he wanted romance history or maybe something adult, considering his teenage vibes. He shut that down instantly, saying he just needed to learn basic world history, so she returned carrying an absolute mountain of heavy books. She warned him that most were centuries old and way out of date, but promised the core info would still be totally solid. And just like that, Turan's massive reading grind started. This became his daily life in Orin, hitting the library every single day, just studying like an absolute madman. Slowly but surely, the entire map of this world finally started making sense. He memorized the races, mage, politics, how magic items were actually forged, plus all the terrifying monsters and lost relics from the fallen ancient empire. Every single page turned this once totally alien world into something so much clearer and incredibly real. A while later, Rugvaltis caught up with him, praising his hardcore study habits, trusting that Turan fully understood the hidden strings attached. Giving a stranger library access while giving him literal VIP noble treatment, that was a massive favor. Because of that, payback was due. Turan did not even flinch, telling the Lord to just name his price. Rugvaltis dropped the bomb. A rogue monster had shown up north of Orin, ruthlessly attacking innocent travelers on the road. They already sent 4 elite knights to handle it, but none came back. Normally nobles handle this themselves, but his family only had 2 fighters available right now. Turan agreed to fight, declaring that keeping people safe was actually a mage's real duty. Still, his alarm bells were ringing. High-class noble mages almost never get their hands dirty with wild monster hunts like this. Rugvaltis explained the northern route, a massive trade artery for the city, had been totally choked off for 10 days straight. They needed that road cleared out immediately, absolutely no questions asked. So what do you and I take from this? Free favors do not exist. Turan realized this mess started before he even arrived, meaning they totally played him with that library pass. Stick with me here. He heads out with some mages and knights to hunt this monster. Azella leads the squad, totally annoyed. She complains her dad must be seriously desperate to bring a guest along, like they somehow cannot be trusted. She clarifies she is not mad at Turan, but this whole setup is just super messy. Another mage actually calls her out for talking trash about her own lord. Then he turns to Turan and introduces himself as Marvin Valtis. Honestly, Azella just wants to get this over with. Marvin even cracks a joke asking if Turan is into his older sister. Turan instantly denies it. Thank goodness. Suddenly, Azella yells for everyone to stop. They spot a totally wrecked carriage. Classic monster attack. Turan checks the area, finds a massive handprint smacked onto a tree and figures it is a giant ape. He points out the beast totally ambushed the merchants and ran back into the woods. If they follow the tracks, they will catch it. Azella admits she completely sucks at tracking magic, so Turan steps up to handle it. When she asks if he is from some special tracking bloodline, he just shrugs. Just practice. He uses a scent from the carriage to track its mana, following the trail straight to a river, where the sneaky beast washed off to lose them. Azella really questions if a dumb animal could be that smart. Now watch this part closely. Before Turan can even reply, a massive gorilla drops right behind them, absolutely launching giant boulders. Several knights are wiped out instantly. Turan easily dodges, but spots something way worse. Those snobby Valtis siblings are literally using the knights as human meat shields. That completely reminds him of his mom's warning. Azella orders an attack, but the ape bolts. Too fast for these nobles. Turan grabs his sling, fires a high-speed rock, and blows a hole right through its heart. Somehow the beast is still kicking, so Azella steps up to finish it. She summons a wicked fire snake that completely scorches the ape. Turan realizes that is the famous Valtis family fire magic. The surviving knights let out a huge breath, but man, they are brutally banged up. Azella casually mentions getting chills when Turan's rock zipped by. Meanwhile, she and her brother barely have a scratch. Turan looks around and sees absolute chaos everywhere. Completely messy. Sure, there were few deaths, but so many guys got hurt because the weak were used as shields. Plus, a mage's body is reinforced by mana. Those rich siblings definitely had crazy durability, but still threw others under the bus without a second thought. Marvin asks if something is bothering him, but Turan plays it totally cool, just spacing out. Shortly after, Azella calls the squad to absorb the monster's mana core all at once. Turan remembers reading about this. Even if a bunch of people absorb it, the total gain never drops. Siblings max out super fast, but Turan just keeps sucking it up. His magic control is insane. I know what you are thinking. He is overpowered. Azella notices he hasn't even hit his limit, easily matching noble tiers. Heading back, Marvin straight up admits that without Turan tracking it and landing that fatal hit, they would have totally failed. Turan brushes it off, saying he actually messed up. He realized way too late that the big guy had sensory skills too. Marvin just looks at him totally confused. Turan breaks it down. A beast's skills directly match its physical traits. Simple logic. Giant hands and huge eyes. That means it can chuck boulders like a cannon and snipe you from miles away. Marvin is mind blown. He figured that out on the fly. Turan says he literally just read some library bestiaries. Marvin laughs, calling the library old news, since literally nobody goes in there anymore. Azella admits she tried visiting once, saw how insanely hard the books were, and instantly quit. So Turan suggests asking the librarian for easier reading material. Azella gives him a super weird look. What librarian? Nobody like that exists there. Later on, flying solo, Turan heads straight back to the library. He slipped up big time. In this town, no normal knight or commoner would ever talk to him so casually. With his skills, everyone around here should be calling him your nobility. No exceptions. Plus, a little girl running the library is insanely suspicious. He asks how she knows his name. She casually replies he is just noticing now since she simply read his guild license. She proudly brags that absolutely nothing goes unnoticed around her library. Trust me, you will want more. He asks her name, but she has none. Let's dive back in. She hinted at a cute nickname, but stick with me. Our guy just called her Miss Librarian. She found that super weird. I mean, just a second ago, he was totally ordering her around like he owned the place. Turan brushed it off and straight up told her to back away. Personal space, you know. Then he asked the obvious question, was she some ancient empire mage? Nope. She casually dropped that she wasn't even human. Just a spirit. She broke it down for him. Soul in a living body, living spirit. Soul in something dead, spirit of the dead. Soul in nothing at all, just a basic spirit. In her case, she was literally the library itself. Her body was just a projection, like a reflection in a puddle. Curious Turan stepped right up and literally stuck his hand straight through her stomach. She immediately started whining. It felt super bizarre and annoying, mostly because she couldn't actually punch intruders back. If she could, she'd be dropping elbows on everyone who damaged her books. Turan pointed out the obvious, absolutely no one in the Valtis family had a clue she existed. Not even the regular readers, and she just smirked. Nobody else had the stats to see her. Now watch this closely. Her creator made it so only someone with a crazy high-tier lineage could see her. She thought that was romantic. Totally confused, he asked what kind of lineage she meant. Her answer: the bloodline of mages. Naturally, Turan asked if she could scan his bloodline and demanded some actual answers. She told him to go ask his parents. But when he said he was an orphan, free health exam, only catch, she had to analyze his body first. He totally cringed and told her to stop sounding creepy. But she didn't even wait for a yes. She shoved her hand right into his chest. Classic spirit move. Total bypass of all personal boundaries. Boom, connection made. She scanned his traits and instantly spotted a major pursuer bloodline tied straight to the legendary hunters of the Zahar family. But get this, there was another bloodline mixed in. 2 different lineages, baby. The second one was sealed though, which happens a lot with mixes. As he leveled up, that hidden power would unlock all on its own. Hearing this, it clicked for Turan. His mom was definitely hiding a massive secret. She was way too smart and classy to be some random commoner. She probably came from some fallen noble house, even if her powers had completely faded away over time. Now that he actually understood what this ghost librarian was, Turan went into absolute grind mode in that library. He stopped just skimming books and started grilling her with a million different questions. She was a living wiki, knew about stolen books, lost history, you name it. She gave him a crash course on the laws of nature. Thanks to her, Turan figured out that germs cause diseases and bacteria break down dead bodies. He leveled up his brain. Light, refraction, friction, heat, and exactly how living bodies get injured and heal themselves. Armed with this big brain energy, Turan started field testing. I know what you're thinking. Field test time. He touched an apple boom, instant rot. Regular magic could do that, sure. But knowing the actual science behind it, it used way less of his mana. His magic literally evolved overnight, all because he started looking at the world like a scientist. He even figured the elite families hoarded this knowledge on purpose. If every mage knew science, the rich guys would lose their absolute dominance. The librarian completely agreed. She said that perfectly explained why human knowledge kept dropping over the centuries. It was a pretty solid theory, but eventually Turan knew he had to bounce. The real owner of the place was throwing major hints that he overstayed his welcome. This librarian actually begged to tag along, but nope, phased right through him. She was permanently tied to the library. He asked if she could physically step outside. She admitted she was completely stuck. She tried begging him to stay, promising special treatment, but he shot her down. Before he walked out, she dropped some huge lore about godly relics everywhere. Yep, including other spirits like her. She hyped up these other spirits, saying they might have even crazier knowledge. Turan promised he'd come back someday. She pretended not to care, but trust me, we both know he'll be back for those unread books. And with that, goodbye, Aurum. Let's dive back in. Turan checks that continent map he scored at the library. The Zahar family base, the Manhwa Desert, is straight east. He heads there for clues about his parents, but takes his sweet time. Traveling calmly, learning the region, camping, crushing local monsters, and soaking up all their mana. His logic, 18 long years have already passed. If any clues are still out there, they aren't vanishing overnight. But during his chill journey, Turan stumbles onto a seriously weird situation. A massive beastmare is desperately guarding her knocked-out master, fighting off 2 vicious dark elves. The elves are totally stunned. How is a mere pet packing this much raw strength? One suggests forcing an opening. They start chanting dark magic using twisted necromancy to summon some seriously evil spirits. Watching from the shadows, Turan hesitates. Should he even help? Maybe the guy picked a fight first. But nope, one look tells him these dark elves are straight-up flesh-eating cannibals. Now watch closely. Turan decides to intervene completely, masking his presence with magic. While they are distracted, boom, one elf loses his head, and his summoned spirits instantly vanish into thin air. The surviving elf defends herself, sacrificing a spirit to block the next strike. Furious, she orders her ghost to hunt down the attacker. She then summons a giant monstrous bull that starts bulldozing right through the trees. Nothing. Realizing the enemy is using stealth, she pulls out a different spirit. This new ghost works like radar, pinging the area. She spots Turan, catching him slightly off guard for a second, but Turan is fast. He blasts the spirit with intense fire while barely dodging a crazy charge from the bull monster. Amid the chaos, a sneaky spirit fox manages to clamp its jaws right onto his leg. That creates a fatal opening. The bull slams its horns straight into Turan, hurling him violently into a thick tree. The dark elf laughs hysterically at this, mocking him. She sneers that now he will be begging for a quick death. But before she can flex, bam, the giant mare blindsides her with a massive hoof to the head, practically crushing the elf with pure beastly strength. Still, it is not over. With the mare exposed, every single remaining ghost swarms the animal to take her down. In that tiny window of distraction, the dark elf gets nailed flawlessly by a stone whipped from Tran's sling. Even horribly injured, he still pulled off the magic shot. With her dead, the spirits instantly lose their form, turning to mere shadows before fading completely. The mare survives unharmed, but Tran is in bad shape. He is so busted up he nearly passes out right there. Even so, the beast approaches to show thanks. Later, the protected man wakes up panicking, only to find himself safe beside a crackling campfire with Tran. You'd be confused too, right? Who's the mysterious savior? Tran calmly explains he saw the cannibals attacking and just decided to step in. The mare named Tilly nudges her owner as if backing up the story, proving she totally sees Tran as a trusted ally. Tran notes how crazy smart she is, literally reading her owner's needs and taking action just to keep him safe. The man is overwhelmed with gratitude. He formally introduces himself as Aziz Burke, a noble from the Burke family. Tran then asks the obvious question, why were dark elves targeting him in the first place? Aziz Burke swears there was no reason. He was just on a peaceful pilgrimage with his servants when they were ambushed. He knew other races could be hostile, but he never expected anything this extreme or insanely bloodthirsty. Looking completely broken, he admits he lost irreplaceable people today. Knights and loyal servants who basically raised him since he was a kid. Seeing his genuine grief, Tran figures Aziz is a good guy. Tran tells him the two elves are dead. Aziz thinks the area is probably clear of enemies now. Better safe than sorry. Tran fires up his tracking magic and confirms there are 0 hostiles left in the woods. When the sun comes up, they bury the fallen. Aziz admits he desperately wants to send them back to their homeland, though it is nearly impossible. Tran nods, agreeing it would not be simple. Still, Aziz thanks him for the rescue and for not laughing at a crying grown man. For a noble, openly weeping over mere subordinates usually looks pretty pathetic to other elites. His father taught him that warriors dying in battle go straight to the gods in the celestial palace. Crying over them, that is just showing weakness. A true noble simply moves forward, ignoring the heavy sacrifices. So, what do we take from this? If strength means feeling nothing when loved ones die, Aziz admits he will never be strong. Turan just smiled, saying it wasn't weakness, just simple kindness. So stick with me here. Aziz suggests they drop the formalities. They are traveling together and hey, they look around the exact same age, right? Boom. Instant besties. Turan totally agreed, promising Aziz that he had his back from that moment forward. Later at camp, Aziz flexed a magical cooler packed with a ton of food grabbed from the last city they visited. Turan stared at the icy box, totally confused. Aziz casually explained it keeps food fresh for a straight week, you just gotta heat it back up if it freezes solid. Then came the real flex, a button that shoots out fresh drinking water like a modern dispenser, or an auto-building tent that just needed a few logs. He even had a proximity alarm plus clothes that literally washed themselves. Talk about overpowered camping gear. Turan was blown away. Magic items like these were insanely rare out here. He joked that self-cleaning clothes would easily pay for the whole life-saving thing, but Aziz quickly shot that down. Too cheap. He swore to give Turan a massive reward back home, even if he had to forge the absolute best gear himself. Besides, Aziz admitted that his shiny toys were nothing compared to Turan. Now watch closely. Aziz saw the crazy magic Turan casually dropped recently. Freezing, flying, mind-controlling beasts, water-bending, boosting stats, shining light, and binding enemies. So Aziz finally had to ask, did Turan spend decades grinding these spells? Or did he have some broken bloodline cheat code letting him master literally every single element? Turan just shrugged. It just happened. Plus, he reminded Aziz they promised 0 questions about each other's backstories. Aziz laughed, saying that kind of broken skill shouldn't exist, and suddenly asked his age. Based on looks, he figured Turan was maybe under 30. 80 max in magic years. Turan casually dropped that he was almost 19. Aziz completely froze in shock, revealing he was actually 43 years old, 24 years apart. Not a big deal, right? Still, Aziz felt dumb for missing the obvious clues, especially after Turan soloed 2 necromancers. Aziz was absolutely stunned seeing another monster-level genius walking around. Turan got curious about this other genius. Aziz quickly clarified they were not exactly on the same tier. It was his second cousin. Hearing that Turan's eyes lit up, could this cousin forge him a super rare magical item? But Aziz sighed. She wasn't just some regular relative. She belonged to the elite main family. I know what you're thinking. A princess, exactly. The Badal Arabian princess, who's basically next in line to rule their entire powerhouse lineage. See, in these massive noble families, the boss's kid does not automatically get the throne. Too many cousins in one generation means some random overpowered kid usually steals the spotlight. But this princess, she was born with absolutely insane talent. 10 years post-awakening, she perfectly mastered every single form of combat bloodline magic. The whole family basically worships her now. Her raw mana was already rivaling the top-tier family elders. Turan asked if she got some secret VIP training. Aziz nodded, yeah, she definitely had a massive boost. She inherited raw magical power from a dead great uncle, even though a few others got small scraps too. Turan instantly realized the truth. Hoarding power like that keeps these mega families sitting at the absolute top. Soon Aziz pointed ahead. They had finally made it to the Dane Plains, the total heart of Badal Arabian. Entering the Burke family turf in Zabalin, Aziz was immediately mobbed by his extremely worried mother. Seeing this 43-year-old dude hug his mom, Turan seriously questioned everything. Dad spawned in scolding Aziz to act his age and show his mother some actual proper respect. Changing the subject, Aziz introduced Turan, his travel buddy, a guy from the south and the absolute legend who saved his life. He straight up admitted that without Turan, he would be a total goner. Panicking, his mom demanded answers. Aziz calmly explained they got jumped by some edgy dark elf necromancers. Furious, she screamed about leading a massive army to completely wipe them out. Dad quickly stepped in to calm her down, whispering that people were literally watching them right now. Turning to Turan, the dad respectfully asked about his family background. Turan awkwardly rubbed his neck. Hard to say, considering he actually had zero clue himself. Born to a commoner mom, father unknown. Aziz is totally shocked, and trust me, you and I know this trope, it's gonna lead to some insane reveals. Turan sighed, admitting it wasn't exactly a flex. Alright, let's dive into this. Even so, Aziz Burke's mother declared that for saving her boy, the wealthy family would give him a fat reward and warmly open their doors. But wait, she added, it was actually too crowded in the main mansion. So they would just book him the absolute best hotel in the entire city instead. Aziz Burke absolutely hated that idea. He immediately complained, asking why his savior couldn't just crash at their own place. His mom sighed and apologized. She explained a super important VIP guest was staying with them, so they couldn't just let some random stranger walk in. Right on cue, the VIP guest appeared. She said if it was about her, there was zero problem. He highly doubted that a guy who just saved Aziz Burke's life would suddenly try to murder her. This was Mesa. And when Turan took one look at her, he thought she looked way more like a walking corpse than a royal princess. He calmly explained her situation. Recently, a nasty group called the Zahar Worms tried to assassinate her, so she decided to lay low here for a while. Aziz Burke flipped out. An assassination attempt inside the main house, especially with their insanely strict defense system running, absolutely unacceptable to him. However, Mesa coldly pointed out that there was likely a traitor hiding inside. Apparently, plenty of family members flat out hated her. Dropping that bomb, she casually walked off to rest. So his mom prepared the second best room in the mansion for Turan. That night, he slept like a rock. The next morning, Turan woke up super early and bumped into Aziz Burke in the hallway. Totally shocked, Aziz asked what on earth he was doing up already. Turan just pointed and said he was busy staring at a magical lamp. Aziz laughed, saying those things were basic childhood enchantment toys. He even offered to just hand one over to Turan since he had a ton lying around anyway. Now pay attention here. Turan declined, but then, boom, a massive lightning bolt struck the courtyard, grabbing both of their attention immediately. Aziz Burke brushed it off. It was just Mesa doing her magic training. Completely normal behavior for someone that insanely dedicated. Totally blown away, Turan asked if that was the legendary Baalbian bloodline. Aziz Burke just nodded yes. It was the Storm lineage. Aziz admitted that even though he loved his own power, he couldn't help but be insanely jealous of hers. It honestly looked like god-tier magic. This hyped Turan up even more. He desperately wanted to see the next generation heir's true strength up close, but he hesitated, figuring it was totally rude for a random stranger to interrupt. Aziz Burke just shrugged it off. No problem at all, since Turan obviously wasn't an assassin. Plus, the rich kid admitted he was super curious himself. He really wanted to see who would win between Turan and Mesa. Years ago, he trained with her and got completely wrecked. He still held that grudge, desperately wanting to see someone finally beat her just once. So Turan walked right up and said hello. Mesa paused, asking what they were doing out there. Aziz Burke played it cool. He said they saw her training and just wanted to join the fun, bringing up their past sparring sessions. Mesa smirked, totally remembering. She roasted him, saying last time he spent an entire week trying a spell she easily nailed in 2 tries. Yeah, he literally ran off crying back then. He begged her to drop it while Turan busted out laughing at the poor guy's misery. Changing the subject fast, Aziz hyped Turan up as the most insanely talented mage ever. He called him a straight-up monster and demanded they duel immediately. Mesa stared him down. A second later, a wild storm whipped up out of nowhere, putting a massive invisible pressure right onto Turan's brain. I know what you're thinking. The dude started sweating buckets. Seeing him struggle, she actually apologized. She figured he just wasn't anywhere near the level needed to fight her head-on yet. But Aziz jumped in. He argued it wasn't about raw magic power, she obviously won that. Turan's real cheat code was his absolutely absurd learning speed. Now actually curious, Mesa raised an eyebrow and asked what exactly they wanted to prove. Turan proposed a completely different challenge. Each would demonstrate a tricky spell the other person likely didn't know. Whoever could copy the magic faster wins. The concept instantly pleased both Aziz Burke and Mesa, but she paused, asking if the rumors were true. Did he really not even know his own magical bloodline? Using her innate storm magic would be totally unfair then. Still, she stepped up to go first anyway. Moving forward, thick vines and roots suddenly exploded from the dirt, wrapping right around Aziz Burke and launching him skyward. She smirked, explaining it was pure plant creation and manipulation magic. Then she challenged Turan to pull off the exact same move. Meanwhile, poor Aziz Burke was just dangling upside down, begging to be dropped before he puked from the intense dizziness. Ignoring him completely, she laughed. Turan just focused hard, slamming his hand into the dirt to deeply analyze her spell's structure. In his mind, making fire was just forcing combustion, and making water meant pulling moisture straight from the air. So these vines, not actual creation. It was just forcing seeds already hiding in the dirt to grow at turbo speed. Trust me, you're gonna love this. He flawlessly copied it. Let's dive right in. Even with his weird mana color, Misa is absolutely stunned. She asks if he's used this magic before. Shocked, he grasped it instantly. He casually says it is his very first try. Hearing that she admits that is incredibly rare. Now it is Turan's turn to throw down a challenge. He gets slightly nervous since real spells are way too risky here, so he decides to just improvise. He summons a tiny animal. Misa thinks it is nothing special at first, until he smoothly explains it's just the main ingredient. One simple touch, and boom, he completely decomposes the rat. Flexing this super weird magic, he asks if she can copy it. Misa accepts the bet, but completely fails. She is super confused about his method, while Aziz Burke just mutters that it looks gross. Honestly, Turan already figured this crazy ability was super rare, maybe even totally unknown to the top noble families. Aziz Burke suggests handing Turan the win, but Misa flat out refuses to lose and keeps trying. She argues that magic needs complex stuff like natural flow, understanding the root cause, and massive amounts of mana. Grasping the true cause is literally the biggest key to actually being efficient, but if you do not understand it, you just brute force it with extra mana. Now watch this part carefully. Burning through a crazy amount of energy, she actually copies the decomposition just way slower than Turan. In the end, all that wild effort completely drains her and she instantly passes out cold. Turan realizes she burned way too much mana. Still, it is super weird normally, that just causes heavy fatigue, not totally fainting. Taking a closer look, he spots weird little details on her clothing and gloves. He starts suspecting she might actually be sick. He asks for a healing mage, but Aziz Burke says nobody is around, so Turan orders water and salt brought to her room. Scooping her up, he is shocked she feels lighter than a tiny lamb. He also realizes the base mana keeping her body moving is completely drained dry. Misa finally wakes up to see Aziz Burke's mother looking super worried and asking if she is alright. Aziz Burke explains she just randomly collapsed while training with their special guest. He suspects foul play, but decides to just watch for now. Misa quickly denies it, blaming her own mistake, and asks everyone to leave. The mom mentions making some warm soup, even though she knows Misa barely eats because of magic. Mom leaves the dish. Misa says thanks, but you and I know it gets worse. One sip triggers insanely dark memories. People screaming for mercy, literally writhing in pure agony. She drops the bowl instantly, acting like someone who has been secretly tortured by this for ages. Meanwhile, Turan is chilling underground in the Burke estate temple of goddess Munka, hanging out with a massive knight named Hiram Burke. The guy brags that the solid gapless walls are like muscles trained for centuries, meaning breaking out of here is basically impossible. Turan has zero idea why he is bragging about this, but just watches quietly. Hiram Burke just keeps heavily emphasizing how insanely tough and unbreakable this place is. And out of nowhere, Hiram starts training. Swinging his massive sword with crazy precision and zero wasted movement, he suddenly spots Turan staring. He asks for an opinion, and Turan admits his moves are solid. Hiram scoffs, saying obviously, since lazy nobles treat martial arts like absolute trash. They love attacking from afar with magic, mostly because their bodies are super weak, completely relying on cheap little parlor tricks. Turan thinks about it, unless you are from a physical bloodline like Hercules, prioritizing raw magic is honestly just way more efficient, though he admits that in total life or death situations, some physical brawls just cannot be avoided. Right on cue, Hiram barks at Turan to grab a sword immediately. Turan is so confused since he is a prisoner getting handed a weapon, but Hiram just laughs, calling it a useless piece of iron. The real power of the sword actually comes from the monster wielding the blade. According to this meathead, with Turan's weak little body, there is zero risk anyway. Turan tries swinging the heavy blade while channeling mana, but gets instantly yelled at. Hiram barks to stop using mana, quickly kicking his legs to fix his terrible posture. Checking his footing, elbow angle, and arm support, he warns Turan that this noodle arm stance will literally just snap his own bones. Without even realizing it, Turan becomes his brand new disciple. See how he got roped into that, so classic. Meanwhile, Hiram Burke just keeps loudly shouting that magic is a total scam. Stick with me here. Most mages think they're perfectly safe, but honestly, they're barely using their actual bodies. He believed a shredded physique could survive a war zone without using a single drop of mana. Turan had to grasp this. Turan nodded, taking notes. Suddenly, Azizberg's mom burst into the temple, completely backtracking. She apologized for being totally awful to the guy who literally saved her kid's life. Turan played it cool and apologized too, admitting his guest manners weren't exactly top tier. But she waved it off, explaining that Misa actually wanted to apologize face to face. Later on, they finally met up. Misa felt super guilty hearing he got locked up in the temple just because of her and said she was sorry. Turan shrugged it off, just happy she was breathing. Then Misa immediately brought up that crazy animal decomposing magic he pulled off earlier. She squinted at him. It burned way too much mana and looked like some secret bloodline technique. Was he secretly scamming everyone with a fake identity? Turan laughed. Nope, no secret bloodline here. Literally anyone could pull it off if they just understood the science behind the spell. Misa crossed her arms and challenged him. Was he seriously planning to give out free lessons? Because unless he spilled the actual method, he couldn't prove it wasn't some exclusive family power. Now watch this closely. Turan didn't care about winning, but Misa was too stubborn to let it slide. She proposed a juicy deal. If he leaked his magic secret, she would trade him an exclusive high-tier battle aura technique. Fair trade, Turan accepted instantly. After hearing his nerd-level explanation, Misa realized the truth. He was basically buffing invisible bugs to do the dirty work. She was doing the exact same thing unconsciously, which totally explained her terrible magic efficiency. She swallowed her pride and admitted defeat. She had only copied his move by dumping raw mana into it. Turan smirked, claiming he won the bet. But Misa stubbornly shook her head. Throwing raw mana around doesn't make you a genius, she argued. She looked at Azizberg and declared it a tie just to keep Turan's ego from inflating too much. Desperate to look cool again, Misa pulled out a comb and showed off a basic static electricity trick. Turan already knew the science behind it. Cue Misa getting absolutely furious. To her, that was peak advanced magic. She realized she couldn't flex on him today. Pouting, she promised to find another way to pay him back. They'd keep training together, but she made sure to add it was strictly business. Turan just smiled and agreed. From now on, garden training dates every single day at sunset. To dinner time, Azizberg was shocked by the massive feast, saying it beat his own birthday party. His mom immediately told him to shut up. Turan caught the vibe. This wasn't just dinner. Soon enough, Azizberg's mom casually brought up their earlier chat. I know what you're thinking. A trap, right? She brought up her son's promised reward and asked what he wanted. Turan played it smart. He asked for defensive gear since throwing fireballs is way easier than blocking a sneaky dagger to the back. She smiled. Defensive items were basically spare change to their family, though they were fresh out of stock right now. Azizberg excitedly offered to craft it himself, but someone rudely cut in, telling him to back off before he embarrassed the whole bloodline. This mysterious guy volunteered instead. He just wrapped up a massive job for the main house and had a totally clear schedule. He offered to make something stealthy like a ring, earring, or necklace. The specs: it would auto-inject mana and pop a Guardian tier shield the second danger approached. Give him exactly 1 month to forge it. Azizberg's dad chimed in. He hated bragging but casually dropped that Marvin Valtis was already packing the skills of a legit family head. Translation: Turan was about to score a ridiculously overpowered top-tier piece of loot. Turan felt super awkward and asked if this was overkill. But Azizberg's mom went hard. Anything cheaper would mean her son's life was worthless. And just like that, it was settled. Turan wasn't going anywhere. He got the VIP treatment crashing at their mansion for the whole month. Later, while strolling through the bustling streets of Zabalin, Azizberg dropped a bomb. His mom was super interested in Turan, like she was literally talking about him before bed, totally hyping up his insane magic skills and hardcore workout routine. Azizberg panicked a bit, saying he only bragged about Turan so his mom wouldn't treat him like some random peasant. Turan saw right through it. This was a classic recruitment scheme. Azizberg sighed and admitted that's exactly how noble politics worked. First comes the free stuff, then comes the guilt trip. And finally, they lock you in by setting you up on an arranged date. But he totally promised Turan wouldn't be forced into a marriage just for accepting a shiny new magic shield. Trying to change the subject, Azizberg asked what Turan was up to today. Just a casual afternoon training session with the princess, obviously. So what do you and I take from this? More free time means more adventures. Azizberg dragged him off for a city patrol. Let's dive right back in. Aziz pointed out that Zabalin had plenty to offer, asking a very valid question. Why stay completely locked up in a stuffy room? Just training when it was such a gorgeous day outside. Turan bluntly agreed that training sounded perfect. Even so, Azizberg totally ignored him and dragged him out to finally enjoy some real life. First, stop a flashy casino where Turan absolutely refused to play. Next, a super sketchy, unsanitary bar that he immediately wanted to leave. But during this little trip, Turan spotted a notice board showing a picture of Kior. He would recognize that face anywhere, instantly grabbing his full attention. Because of that, he bought tickets to a play detailing the epic story of that exact night set back in the year 2195, when the fierce warriors of Battle Erebon bravely marched straight into the demon desert. It highlighted Kior, who used divine help to crush a terrifying enemy after an insanely brutal, difficult battle. After the show wrapped up to wild applause, Aziz Burke turned and asked if the play was actually worth watching. Turan simply nodded, replying that it was pretty good. But it honestly just reminded him that Kior always called himself a totally ordinary knight, proving just how ridiculously humble his old master was. He secretly thought that if they ever crossed paths again, he would absolutely demand to know if that theatrical story was actually accurate. The very next morning, Turan woke up to Haram Burke intensely staring at him, asking if that body rested well. Turan confirmed, then asked why he was visiting. Haram Burke casually explained he saw immense physical potential in him the day before officially inviting him to train, saying a real body doesn't get stronger by sleeping but by being brutally forged. He made it clear Turan could say no if he really wanted to. But Turan accepted, figuring harsh training was way more productive than just sitting around doing absolutely nothing. Aziz Burke entered the room loudly, calling for Turan, only to find his intimidating uncle standing there. Haram Burke smirked, saying he was taking Turan to train. He then provoked Aziz, asking if he wanted to finally strengthen that completely pathetic, weak body. Aziz, visibly terrified and completely unwilling, awkwardly lied that he was way too tired from the city. He bolted, confusing Turan. But honestly, you and I will see exactly why he ran away later. During the brutal workout, doing inclined push-ups with heavy weights strapped to his back, Haram Burke casually asked if Turan could hear his body screaming. He yelled at him not to give in to minor pain, claiming his mind was just getting totally dominated by physical weakness. When it finally ended, Turan was dead tired. But Haram Burke explained that because he was still a mage, he should feel super lucky to do this just once. Normal bodies, even after insane training, weaken over time and desperately need to be tested constantly. But mages, thanks to mana, they keep their bodies in a completely perfect state, like pure steel that never ever rusts. Giving him zero time to breathe, Haram Burke demanded to know if he had recovered enough. Turan complained it had literally only been 5 seconds, but his crazy uncle insisted the body never lies and that tiny break was completely enough. Then, the hand-to-hand combat lessons officially started. Because of this nonsense, Turan's daily routine with the Burke family became brutally intense. Mornings were for torturous body training with Haram Burke. At dusk, he dragged himself back to the mansion to practice high-level magic with Mesa. In between all that, he still hung out with Aziz until, without even realizing it, 3 whole weeks had completely flown by. During one magic session, Turan missed his target with a lightning spell yet again, instantly catching the sharp-eyed princess's attention. She mentioned that such difficulty was totally weird for someone exactly like him. Turan defended himself, explaining he wasn't originally from Battle Erebon. Mesa sighed, replying that she really couldn't help him much since she never actually needed to aim lightning magic like that. Suddenly, a nervous guard approached with a message, looking super uncomfortable about Turan being there. But Mesa coldly ordered him to speak fast, reminding him she already banned anyone from the main house from coming near her. The shaking guard quickly reported that the powerful head of the family had officially summoned her. Now pay close attention. The Dark Elves launched a massive southern attack, stealing 3 cities and forcing an emergency expedition. Turan was shocked. The elves were back. Mesa instantly understood how crazy the situation was and declared she had to leave right away, adding that she definitely still planned to collect her payment for that epic decomposition magic he showed earlier. She asked if he knew electricity constantly flows through the human body too. When he looked confused, she explained it was a highly guarded secret of Battle Erebon, offering to completely clear his debt if he managed to learn that concept properly. She explained that whenever someone sees, feels, or smells anything, tiny electrical charges immediately fire straight into their brain, which processes everything and sends movement commands back to the muscles. At first, Turan struggled to wrap his head around it, but then it clicked. It perfectly matched those old concepts from the library books, basically just another absolute law of nature. Mesa asked what happens if magic accelerates that electricity. You and I both know the answer. His reaction speed is going god tier. Stick with me here, she praised his genius reasoning, confirming he could totally become a scholar. Curious, she decided to demonstrate it. Turan just closed his eyes. He visualized pure electricity coursing through his body, using his mana to drastically accelerate those nerve signals. Boom, it worked. Everything around him instantly shifted into super slow motion. But then a massive headache slammed into him, completely breaking his concentration and shattering the spell. Mesa sighed, explaining his failure came from using mana way too recklessly. The pain meant adapting right now was basically impossible, but she reassured him that with enough practice he would eventually maintain the crazy speed technique for much longer. Thinking it over, Turan dropped a comment about the spell. This high-tier magic felt way too valuable compared to the little bit he had offered her. Misa just smiled, calling it a long-term investment in his wild talent. She promised to collect her dues later when he inevitably mastered even more overpowered magic, and just like that, she vanished on her urgent mission. A few days later, a massive crowd gathered in Morgaine City right in the center of the Deccan Plains. They were all watching the grand departure of Badal Arabian's mages and knights. What was supposed to be a standard dark elf hunting mission basically turned into a giant flashy parade. Aziz Burke joked about the spectacle while scanning the crowd, suddenly pointing out Misa on horseback. He waved like an excited fanboy until his dad scolded him, demanding he act like a proper noble. Right then, the actual head of the family made his grand entrance. Turan took one look at the guy and whispered to Aziz Burke. The leader looked incredibly pale, making Turan wonder if he was seriously ill. Aziz Burke spilled the tea, sharing rumors that the boss took a brutal injury years ago while fighting the leader of House Zahar. But honestly, since that battle happened ages ago, his frail look might just be old age catching up. Watch closely here. The frail old man suddenly raised his hand. He instantly summoned ridiculously dense clouds, turning the sky pitch black and blocking out the sun. His voice boomed, hyping up the troops to march confidently while flexing that this overwhelming power protected them. Crazy thunder echoed across the dark sky, lighting up the area with intense, jagged lightning strikes. Even with that seemingly sickly body, Badal Arabian effortlessly blanketed a massive area with pure lightning magic. This was the absolute peak of human magic. Seeing it ignited a fire in Turan, making him swear he would reach that god-tier level one day too. Sometime later, the Burke family's eldest member casually handed Turan a mysterious artifact, explained that simply equipping the item would give his physical resistance a nice little boost, but pump some mana into it. The defense stat skyrockets, making him almost as tanky as the elite nobles from the Guardian lineage. The catch: the mana drain was absolutely insane, so he couldn't keep the shield active for very long. Turan was blown away. An artifact of this tier was ridiculously rare, considered exceptional even among the absolute top-ranking families. After that awesome gift, Aziz Burke's mother actually asked if he wanted to formally join their family. I know what you're thinking, take the deal. But Turan politely declined, explaining he had way too many wild goals to stay tied down in just one single place. She totally understood, laughing that she had heard all the crazy stories from her son. For a guy like him, settling down just didn't make any sense. Turan bowed, swearing he would never forget their amazing hospitality. From now on, Aziz Burke and the whole Burke family were his friends for life. When it was finally time to say goodbye, Aziz Burke and Haram Burke were waiting. Haram gifted him a magical knife. No flashy skills, just incredibly durable and insanely sharp. Turan smiled and gave his master a heartfelt thanks for the awesome blade. Then Aziz Burke playfully tossed a heavy cloak right over Turan's shoulders. Grinned, reminding Turan how he used to constantly envy his fancy clothes. This wasn't just any fabric. The magic cloak repelled dirt and completely regenerated itself after taking minor damage. He threw in a fresh shirt and pants too, making it super clear that Turan was a true friend, not just some guy who saved his life once. Hanging out together actually helped Aziz level up his magic and really rethink his own entire future. He deeply valued that. Before finally splitting up, he asked about the next destination. Turan smirked, saying he was heading straight east first. Aziz warned him about the journey, mentioning his own travels to Carmine. He strongly advised skipping the sea route because those ocean waves were absolutely brutal. Turan knew damn well he had to cross that dangerous ocean to reach Zahar, but decided to keep his mouth shut. Still, Aziz chuckled, knowing a stubborn guy like him wouldn't ever starve. He just demanded Turan return safely someday and pay him back for the expensive cloak. A little later, back on the solo grind, Turan decided to test his legs and sprint. He rocketed past a whole line of people blazing through landscapes until hitting a forest. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Let's dive into this because you and I are about to uncover one absolutely wild and smoky mystery. He investigates and finds a completely torched village. Nothing left but ashes and completely charred bodies tied to wooden posts. His first thought, a bandit raid. After all, there was zero chance any dark elves could reach this far out. Poking around the ruins, Turan spots a perfectly intact trapdoor inside a house. He pulls it open and finds a terrified little girl hiding down there. He quickly calms her down, explaining he's totally friendly and just wants to help. When he asks what happened, she mutters that a crazy mage slaughtered everyone, then completely blacks out. Turan quickly realizes she isn't actually hurt, just totally exhausted from hiding down there. His immediate plan is getting her somewhere safe. But as he climbs out of that trapdoor, a woman aims an ice arrow at his head. She barks at him to kneel, accusing him of burning the village, massacring everyone, and kidnapping the kid. Suddenly, other knights surround him, charging up fire magic. Turan tries to explain it's a huge misunderstanding, but things spiral way out of control and they unleash their attacks. Watch closely now. Despite the kid being there, their attacks directly blast Turan. When the smoke finally clears, he stands there completely unharmed, leaving every single knight totally speechless. He realizes he just had to use that special artifact way earlier than planned. Clearly, this thing was no ordinary piece of defensive gear. The archer is absolutely stunned, trying to figure out what insane defensive magic that was. Meanwhile, Turan sighs and explains once again that he didn't attack anyone. It's just a giant misunderstanding, and he gives a fair warning: attack him again, and he won't just stand there defending. Hearing that, the archer finally stops and analyzes the situation, notices the kid doesn't have a single scratch. That makes zero sense for a kidnapper. She introduces herself as Bisson, awkwardly admitting that his story actually lines up with the facts. Still, she asks how she can truly trust him with all the evidence around them. Turan just shrugs, asks the girl when she wakes up. She saw the real culprit. Surprised, Bisson presses for details. Turan casually mentions that the little girl mumbled something about a mage. That changes everything. Bisson reveals they have been hunting a completely unhinged arsonist mage who's been torching isolated villages for months. This psycho ties up villagers and burns them alive, leaving absolutely zero survivors. Don't even know if it's a man or woman, only going by that terrifying nickname. When the kid wakes up, she confirms the killer wore a red cloak, rocked a beard, and looked like a lumberjack. You and I both saw this coming, right? The knights stare at Turan, realizing their massive mistake. He doesn't even have a beard. Looking incredibly foolish, Bisson and her entire squad apologize for aggressively pointing their weapons at him so fast. Turan just sighs, reflecting that even high-class nobles sometimes let their blind duty completely override basic logic. But honestly, he completely respects that their absolute first priority was keeping the little kid safe. He then asks if they came all this way just for the arsonist. Bisson quickly confirms, finding him standing alone in the freshly burned ruins. Yeah, they naturally assumed they had finally caught their guy. Now, with a solid physical description, tracking this psycho down will be way easier, especially since they brought a specialist tracker along. Curious, Turan asks if this expert tracker belongs to the famous Zahar family. Bisson shakes her head. She is actually from the Carmen family in Yabisha, rolling with members of their loyal vassal families. Apparently, the tracker's ancestors mixed bloodlines with Zahar nobles back in the day, resulting in a special awakened lineage that is super rare. Seeing his skills, Bisson suddenly pops a major question. Can Turan help them hunt down this crazy arsonist? She offers a fat reward, or even her own mana, since she really needs the merit. Turan pauses and asks about the enemy mage's actual power level. Bisson admits he is definitely sitting at noble tier. Proof. Even villages guarded by heavily armed knights were completely wiped off the map without a single trace. A wicked grin crosses Turan's face. This is the exact opponent he needs to test his real strength. Slapping around weak demonic beasts on the road just isn't cutting it anymore. He confidently agrees to join the hunt, but sets one hard rule he has to get the kid to safety first. A little while later, he drops the girl off at a nearby village with the local chief. He drops a huge bag of money to raise her properly, demanding they treat her well because he is absolutely coming back to check on her. That's where we leave it, his firm tone left, the chief totally intimidated. Back to the destroyed village. The tracker steps up using pure mana to scan for clues, though it takes a minute to lock onto a solid trail. Stick with me, we are following them straight into the dark woods. They watch her every move, smelling the air, checking the dirt, analyzing the whole scene like an absolute pro. Turan is super curious about her process. She casually explains that step 1 was just looking for human footprints. Hitting the main road, she locks onto the smell of ash. Why? Because the criminal definitely didn't bother changing his burnt, smoky clothes. Turan is blown away by her skill. He finally gets why he found absolutely nothing earlier. There were zero obvious clues. Before long, the tracker points out the exact spot. The squad rolls up to a dark cave entrance, Bison and Turan taking point. Stepping carefully, the tracker gives them the nod. Yep, someone is definitely inside. Deep inside, they stumble on a sketchy little base. A creepy altar, a campfire, and a terrible bed. Now watch closely, this sickly old guy in the red hood is seriously bad news. The crazy old man asks why they came to his hideout. The tracker just glares. Target confirmed. Bison skips the small talk. He looks the guy dead in the eye. Did you burn those villagers? The mage answers by blasting a massive fireball right at the knights, but the artifact shield completely blocks it. Turan and Bison see their huge opening. Their archer instantly snipes the guy's leg. He hits the dirt but wildly summons giant hands out of the earth to crush them flat. Turan casually dodges, whips out his sling, and literally tears the enemy's arm straight off. Brutal. Then with a simple snap of his fingers, he completely stops the guy's heart. Instant cardiac arrest. Fight over, right? Nope. Turan tosses magic seeds around the dying body and pumps mana. Thick vines erupt, totally wrapping the arsonist up tight. Blinded, trapped, and completely unable to cast. Turan presses a cold blade to his throat. Don't move a muscle or one drop of mana means you are dead meat. You saw that too, right? Totally confused, the arsonist asks how they found him. Turan just smirks. He has his ways. Now start talking. Did you do all those attacks? The guy stays quiet, so Turan stabs his injured leg. Talk, why is a wandering noble running around burning totally innocent people alive? The broken man finally spits it out. He was following his god's orders. He seriously thought burning the flesh and souls of sinners would get him closer to God. Get this, the so-called God taught him a cheat code to steal other bloodline powers. Humans get fire powers. Bison shuts that down instantly. Absolute madness. You cannot just magically absorb an innate bloodline like some video game. But hold up. Turan remembers Midan's earlier words. Normal humans getting magic by hunting demonic beasts. Suddenly, this crazy theory starts making horrible sense. The crazy arsonist screams he just needed a few more bodies to win. Turan's brain goes into overdrive. This is not just some crazy old man. Trust me, you and I just stumbled onto a massive world-breaking secret.